They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Okay, so last video, I know not too many people are going to get upset with us talking about some underrated players, but now this is when the hate's going to come in. And please feel free to let me know in the comment section. But we are going to go through, talk about some overrated players in fantasy basketball drafts this year. These are going to be some guys that you should be avoiding. Now, it's not against the players themselves, more about the price point that you're having to select these players with. So, of course, I'm not smart enough at all to just go through and do this by myself. So, again, we have Garrett out here to help us out. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get these videos to you all season. So make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscribe button as well. So, Garrett, do you want to just lead us off here?
Yeah, and I want to quickly shout out Fantasy News and Brews. That's myself and Johnny. DMs are always open, so hit us up on there if you need draft help or whatever. But yeah, let's just jump right in. First one's going to be a pretty hot take, and this is probably going to be the first one where we get some hate. But I think that Julius Randle at 14 is someone that I'm going to avoid in every draft that I do. I think that, Julius Randle, he was so good last season. And this is more of I don't really have a lot to back it up, except for if you look at the regular season to postseason stats. In the regular season, he was shooting 45% from the field, 41% from the three. And then in the postseason, that dropped down to 30 and 33. That's terrible. And maybe this is a recency bias because I watched him in the playoffs and he sucked. But I don't see it. I think that, he joined the team. He kind of took over. He had a hot streak. I think that he's not going to get better. And if you're drafting him at number 14 over guys like LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, Joel Embiid, you're praying that he takes a step up from last season. I don't see it. I don't think he's going to take a step up. I mean, even Devin Booker ranked at 27. I'm taking Devin Booker at 27 over Julius Randle at 14. Maybe that's too much of a hot take, but I'm sticking with my gut here.
Are you kidding me, Garrett? Like, out of all the players that you're going with, you're going to have to start us off with the New York Knicks. Do you have any idea?
I know.
Any idea what the people in the comment section are going to be saying? Now, I'll say if we pull up hashtag basketball with the projections right now, they have Julius Randle, that player 38 at 38. So they definitely agree with you on this one. And I will say, I want to put a little bit less emphasis on the playoff splits with Julius Randle, just because it's a little bit different here with Tom Thibodeau. You know that this is a coach that really only cares about the regular season for whatever reason. He thinks that he needs to go balls to the wall 40 minutes a game with the starters. But yeah, so obviously, I mean, nobody thought that the New York Knicks were going to be significant players in the postseason. That's kind of how they got shut down. But yeah, I love the call, but I'll say, oh man, it's tough talking bad about any of these Knicks players because Knicks fans are ridiculous.
Well, let me tell you one thing. If you're drafting Julius Randle over Joel Embiid, you're probably not going to do that great in your fantasy season unless Joel Embiid gets hurt. That's the only way that that's going to pay off for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's my gut. I'm sticking with it. Sorry, Knicks fans, but
yeah. And Randle just came off of a season where he played a ridiculous amount of minutes. So I don't necessarily want to say that Randle's bulletproof himself.
I mean, even in the playoffs, his minutes went down. Everything went down in the playoffs. And, there's a reason for that. And I hate to say it, but I think the reason is he's not a superstar. Sorry, Knicks fans.
All right, well, let's get to the next guy here.
All right, so I'm not really going in order of ESPN. I just kind of made a list and I'm going through it. But number 44, Ben Simmons. And this one, Ben Simmons is a good player, but I might even get hate for saying that he's a good player at this point, watching his playoff performance. But I do think he's a good player. I think he'll bounce back. My concern is, I mean, it's clear he's going to a new team. I mean, like he might have been traded to a new team while we're recording this video for all we know. He's gone. I'm not going to trust that. I'm not going to trust until I know what team he's on. I'm not going to trust it. There's no way that I'm going to draft him at 44 over guys like, Michael Porter Jr., Gordon Hayward, OG Anunoby, Brandon Ingram. Like, I'm not going to draft him over all these guys with so many unknowns. I will say he is a high risk, high reward kind of player, but in fantasy basketball, that's not what you always want. Sometimes you want that consistency, especially with these later guys, in the rounds 40 to 60. You don't want a dude with an extremely low floor. And I think that that's what Ben Simmons brings here. So I'm going to be avoiding him at 44.
How the hell is he at 44?
I don't know.
I pulled up the projections in hashtag basketball, and they have him down here in the 80s. They have him at 83. There's so much uncertainty. Where would be what spot would he have to land in for him to be worth it at 44? Like, what team would he have to go to for you to be like, okay, well, there's so much opportunity here that we can go with him?
Yeah. So I will say, if he gets traded to, like, say Houston is like, let's give up, Woods and like all of our assets for Ben Simmons, and then Ben Simmons is like that guy on that team with no other players. At that point, I might even consider him a little higher. But the thing is we don't know. That uncertainty is why I'm so skeptical on him. I mean, if he gets traded to the Raptors, I don't want any pieces of Ben Simmons. If he gets traded to, a team that already has solidified stars, I'm not taking him at 44. I mean, even if he plays on the 76ers, which, I mean, no one's saying is a possibility, but it still seems like it might be, I don't want him at 44. So I'm just avoiding him. And, if by time draft day rolls around and he's on a team like Houston or a team like the Thunder or a team like, I mean, even Detroit, like, then maybe I'll consider it. But until we know where he lands, I'm not even touching him I wouldn't even touch him until like maybe pick 70, 80, 90. Like I'm avoiding him altogether.
And it does seem weird because, like, if you would assume that a team's trading for Ben Simmons, based on what we have seen so far, nobody's trading for Ben Simmons to go through and build the team around him. You're trading to add him to a team like the Raptors, like you're already saying, that he's going to have a very specific role that he can go through, he can defend, and then he can distribute on offense. They're not going to ask that much from him. So it is, I'm 100% with you on that one.
All right. Next, I have, and this might be another one that a lot of people talk about as a potential person they want to target because he is going later, but it's DeMar DeRozan at 52. Again, in fantasy basketball, I try to eliminate risk as much as possible, and I just see him as a huge risk. Last season he did average 21 points, shooting almost 50% from the field goal, and that's good. But now he's on a team with Zach LaVine. He's on a better team, in my opinion, when it comes to fantasy purposes. I think that he's not going to be the guy that he was on the Spurs. They have Patrick Williams, who's going to be eating up some of that. They got Lonzo Ball now. I mean, Caruso probably isn't going to do much for fantasy purposes, but, I just don't see his role being as big as it was. So he's someone, sitting at 52, right behind him at 53 is Brandon Ingram. And I'd rather have Brandon Ingram. So I'm just avoiding him based on where he's being drafted right now on ESPN. If he drops a little bit, there's guys like, for example, Cade Cunningham is at 62. So if I can get DeMar DeRozan over Cade, I'm going to do it. But I'm not going to reach for DeMar, and I'm going to try to avoid him, if I can.
Yeah, on San Antonio last year too, there were really no other options. But going to Chicago, it's just going to be like a different story. And pulling up #basketball for their projections, I mean, they have him at 78. So yeah, every player you were calling here, I know you said you didn't look at any projections before this video, but every player you were calling, it's like a sniper out here, just identifying the overvalued.
I can promise. Last night I pulled up ESPN's rankings on that they updated 5 days ago, and I looked through and I just marked some people that I thought were just way too high. So I'm lucking out here is what's happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get this next guy going.
Yeah. So next guy, another one that people might hate on, but it's Klay Thompson. I love Klay. I love Klay so much, but at 88, I mean, the guy going above him at 87 is Jeremy Grant. We don't know when Klay's coming back. They're saying hopefully December. That could be pushed back easily to February. We don't know, and I'm scared about that. The only way that I would take Klay is if I just have an absolutely stacked team because my league mates are letting all these good players drop. Then maybe I'd consider it because the upside is there later. But, if you're playing in a league with a bunch of players who know what they're doing and, you're basically getting guys at their ADP, I don't want Klay at 88. It's just too much of a risk. We don't know when he's coming back. And when he comes back, he might be on a huge minute limits. So I'm avoiding that whole situation. Again, similar to the other guys, I'm just avoiding the risk.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because I was right about to get there. Like, even when he comes back, what's the upside? Because when he comes back, I mean, he's another year older coming off the injury. They're not going to be going, okay, well, yeah, you missed a significant portion of time with a significant injury. Let's give you 36 minutes tonight. Like, you're not like, if he's out, as long as you're saying, you're probably not going to be able to start him again for another 3 weeks or so at the minimum, whenever he is playing.
I mean, we don't know if let's just put some projections out there or some things that could potentially happen. Golden State could be pretty good this year. They got some good guys. I like the Avery Bradley signing that they just did. They could be an okay team, and they could get Klay back, and they could just do a huge limit on his minutes until the playoffs. Like, why would they?
Yeah.
they're going to be a lock for the playoffs, he might only be playing 15 minutes per game at most. So for fantasy purposes, I'm avoiding it. For basketball purposes, I love Klay. I think he's a great player, but it's just not worth the risk to me.
Yeah, and I mean, even if he is 100%, you're not getting rebounds, you're not getting assists. So it kind of is what it is.
Yep. One more. This one also could blow up in my face really easy. And I could easily see it happening because he gets a lot of hate. So it's Russell Westbrook at 24. I like Russ. I think Russ is a great fantasy player. I don't know how, in person, actually watching the NBA, he makes a lot of mistakes and he loses his team a lot of games and he plays hero ball too much. But for fantasy, he's pretty good. He had in the 2021 season, he had first overall in assists. He had almost 23 points per game and 11 rebounds per game. Like, those are some pretty good stats, even though his field goal percentage and 3-point percentage weren't great. They still weren't bad, sitting at 43 and 31. But the problem is he is now on the Lakers. So he is going to play really, really well when one of Anthony Davis or LeBron are out. He's going to be a star. He's going to be so good for fantasy. But when all three of them are playing on the court, I do not think Russ is going to have the upside that he had on other teams. And when we're looking at him at 24, that's potentially, if you're in a 12-man league, that is in your second round. I don't want to risk that upside with my second round pick when I could get guys like, I know we talked about DeMar, but I do like Zach LaVine still. I'm sure one of De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, Chris Paul, maybe Gobert, Embiid, one of them may fall to you. So just where he's sitting at, I'm not trusting it. I mean, we talked about a guy in our earlier video who I'm targeting, Ja Morant at 39. I'm taking Ja over Russell Westbrook just because there's not as much risk. So he's someone that I'm avoiding at 24.
How old is Russell Westbrook at this point? I feel like a 32-year-old Russell Westbrook is definitely a lot older than a regular 32-year-old NBA player. I mean, just with the wear and tear that he's had. I mean, with the injuries that he's had as well. I think you're right. I mean, I will say you have no idea how much hate I got last year going into the season saying to avoid him. And then I'm not going to lie, I was running some pretty good victory laps about a month into the season. And then I had to just shut up about him for the rest of the time whenever he was winning leagues.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to sit this one out for you, my friend, because I've already gotten burnt.
I'm not going to lie to you. If he was still on a different team, I probably would actually like him at 24, but it's the Lakers. I think that there's just too many stars to feed. If LeBron and AD are on the floor, Russ is not going to be cooking. If one of them is out, I think that Russ will be great, but I don't want to bank on injuries or rest on my second round pick. That just doesn't seem like a smart move for me. So I'm avoiding him. If I can get him in the third or fourth, maybe that's a different story. But with where he's being drafted right now at 24, I'm just avoiding him.
Awesome. Well, I think that should be it for the video. You got anything else to tell the people other than drop that like, subscribe to the channel?
Just those. Let us know how we did. Let me know, in 3 months how bad some of my calls were, and we'll go from there.
They're going to let you know today. They're not going to wait 3 months. I'll tell you that right now.